It is spooky month, October, and we decided to check out one
That's
of the
right.
top horror movie trilogies of all time on here on Thousand Movies Before You Die. And the trilogy, if you haven't guessed it already, is the Frankenstein trilogy. Frankenstein
Woo-hoo.
1931, Bride of Frankenstein 1935, and Son of Frankenstein 1939. So
Absolutely.
we,
Yeah, that's
we
fantastic.
yeah.
That's Nate. I'm Toby, and welcome to the channel. We're going to do this could be all, I mean, there's so much to say about all three of these.
Yeah.
Um, well, less about the third one, I think, but certainly about the first two. That
Mhm.
yeah, we gotta try and keep it concise. Like um, the first one being just so, I guess it was just a little after Dracula, right? So
Yes, I think
it's
it came out the same year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So I mean, there are like when I did my little search on the streaming service I have, just the Frankenstein, there were
Mhm.
50 titles with the word
Yeah.
Frankenstein in it.
Yes.
So like I don't I mean maybe Dracula you get the same, but I mean that just tells you just the iconic nature of that and this movie because the novel actually is quite different than this movie, right?
Yeah.
It's very, very different actually. And the monster, which is sort of that iconic design, that's got nothing to do with the book, right? That comes
Yeah.
straight out of the movie.
Yeah.
Um, and I just read that it's licensed to Universal until 2026.
Oh, wow. And then it's
That's
public
right.
domain.
And then yes, you can go nuts and have all your Frankenstein paraphernalia. But yeah, until then, it's licensed to Universal,
Wow.
specifically that. Yeah, and it was yeah, all of that comes straight from the imagination of the designer. Yeah, like this film has like the filmography is incredible. Not the filmography, the cinematography
Yes.
is incredible. And it's the same cinematographer as Casablanca.
Oh, is it
So 10 years
really?
later, he did Casablanca, and he just was nominated for All Quiet on the Western Front.
Huh.
I believe the year before. Yeah, I think that's 1930.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's why this film, like I don't know if you noticed, it's really beautiful film, right?
Yes.
Like
Well,
there's,
and is it how much credit also goes to James Whale, who
I would say
was
a
the
lot
director?
because he,
Yeah.
yeah, he uh, was kind of the driving force to get this film sort of with the look that it is and everything.
Mm.
Um, and it was originally going to be actually Bela Lugosi, who was supposed to be the monster,
Yeah.
and then it was supposed to be not Mae Clark that was playing. I believe it's Elizabeth is her
Elizabeth.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was supposed to be Betty Davis,
Oh, really?
but
Wow.
they thought that Betty Davis had no sex appeal, so they put in Mae Clark. And this is the same year that she gets that grapefruit shoved in her face by James Cagney in, I believe it's Public Enemy,
Yeah.
which is one of his first great iconic
And
roles. So yeah,
very
she's
iconic role.
two great iconic films. So she's got a monster chasing her and getting a grapefruit shoved in her face, having her career take off. So yeah, this is um, yeah, it's like that one scene in particular. There's a scene where she's got her wedding dress on and she's walking through some rooms, right? And I think she wants to talk to Dr. Frankenstein, and it's just this shot that sort of follows her through maybe two or three rooms, and
Yes.
it's just incredible, like the way the dress flows and the shadows and just the
Yes.
all the knickknacks. I forgot. I don't know if the guy who the set designer or something. I forgot his name. It was Strickland or something like that, and
Yeah.
they started to use that name for the sort of when you get all kinds of period specific knickknacks to sort
Oh.
of populate a scene. So that was sort of given his name. You were Fricklandizing the scene. I'm doing this
Yes.
guy complete injustice by not remembering his name, but it's this really weird sort of German name.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's famous for creating that, very attention to detail. And it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's just
Well, and it's also, if you know any of the I'm sure they drew a lot from the German thing, like movies like Nosferatu, and
Yes, yes,
it's
yes.
all the shadows, the that kind of gothic look, where they've got all the stark contrasts and dramatic shadows. Someone walks in the room and the shadow's like 10 feet high, and
Yeah.
and that's very much of that style. And it probably was directly influenced because Nosferatu had only come out, what, 8 years earlier than this?
Yeah. Well, I was, I think 22 was
22.
Nosferatu, so
Okay.
9 years earlier.
22 or
So it
23.
was
So 8 or 9 years
German
before.
Expressionism, right, is what it's
Yes.
called. I'm
Yes.
not actually sure what that is, but yeah, it's definitely it's all these sort of stark shadows,
Well,
and
I think the German
it's
expressionists basically were they used the image of including the buildings to represent the emotional state of the characters and to express a kind of a feeling, right? And so they actually use the set in a much more, so a lot of the sets are not necessarily the most practical of designs, but they were intended to create this image of emotion, essentially, and
yeah,
convey
kind of like
that through
what
the
is that, the
set.
mise en scène, right, the mise en
Yep.
scène of the
Yep.
scene, right? It's sort of, yeah, this great gothic, it's, yeah, I don't know, I liked it a lot better than Dracula, I have to say.
Yep.
There's definitely a back and forth when you go online. These
Yep.
movies, there's some people will, think Dracula's better. Many think this is the better film. I think this is the better film. I was kind of wishing for a music like when the monster first appears. It's
Yep.
quite dramatic, and you gotta always put yourself in the mind frame of audiences at the time, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we've seen this monster, like, I mean, thousands of times. It
Yes.
really doesn't mean much to us other than it's just very iconic.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just see the outline with no detail and you would know exactly what it was.
Yes.
Whereas, I mean, they were seeing this for the first time, and
Yeah.
it's, for me, it's the droopy eyelids that really sort of
Yeah.
make it really creepy, right? And just the way he moves is really
Yes.
creepy. So him bringing that, and his size, right? Like, he's
Yeah.
huge. His hands are really big.
Yeah.
But Colin Clive is no slouch in this. Like, he's really creepy in it.
Yeah.
It's basically about him kind of going insane. I think is a real important theme in this
Yeah.
film, right? As he's playing God, and
Yeah.
um, I mean, he's got the most famous iconic line, right? It's alive,
Yes.
and but just the madness where there's a scene where they call him crazy, and he's like, "Call me crazy, we'll see." Right? And
Yes.
he's really like, yeah, I really liked him. He
Yeah.
played
Yeah.
that just perfectly.
Well, Karloff was very humble about the role, actually. He famously said that you could have thrown a brick out a window and hit 10 actors that could have taken that role. And that's perhaps true. I mean, I don't know how much the makeup does in that whole thing,
Well, yeah, I don't like.
but
Depends on how much of the characterization is his, right? Like, there's a
mhm.
scene where he reaches up towards the light, and it's. I mean, if some of these are his ideas,
Yes.
then, like, the thing about the monster that is so effective is that it's really he's really like an innocent, right? It's an
Yes.
innocent sort of child, which is kind of confusing about the criminal brain, because he's not really a criminal, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's not really evil. He's sort of misunderstood,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
he wants to, like, he only throws the little girl in because
He's
it's
playing.
it's a
He thinks it's fun.
misunderstanding, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, the whole idea, of course, that a criminal brain means you'll be a criminal, right? Like, it must
Yes.
be wired differently.
Yeah.
So, it, but that doesn't really make sense. And then he's also got kind of superhuman strength, which I never understood that at all. Like, it's a bunch of dead bodies.
Yeah.
There's no reason why he should have super strength,
Well,
right?
they try and explain that away in the third movie where they address that and say, oh, the cells are acting differently, and
Oh, okay, okay.
and the just the way that the body was constructed, I guess, or whatever. It's given superhuman strength and so forth, and is
Yes.
not your average zombie by any stretch. But to go back
So,
to
yeah.
Colin Clive, obviously an amazing actor. I thought he personified Frankenstein. Now, I'm curious, I don't know if you know this, but the character in the books is Victor Frankenstein, if
Yes,
I'm
that's
not
right. Yeah.
mistaken. So why did they rename him Henry?
I don't know. Actually, I don't know why he's Henry and not Victor.
Yeah,
Right? That's a good question because I mean they can't be worried about copyright. I mean they've
yeah.
got the book, right? I mean the other thing that's really, you talk about
Well, the book was over 100 years old at that point. It was written in 1816.
and
So,
they kind of do her injustice. They call her,
yeah,
it says the book by Mrs. Percy Shelley. It's like just her
yeah,
husband's. It's
yeah.
like, wait a minute, he didn't write it. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's what the
Or
hell?
yeah, your Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Well,
So,
they do that on the second one, right? They really
yes.
correct that, like really correct. We'll get into that with the second movie, but they really correct the sort of brushing her under the carpet. And
Yes.
then Karloff is just a question mark, right? So
Yeah.
halfway down is it says the monster, and then there's just a question mark.
Yes. I
Um,
love that. It's like, who could it be?
that's right, you know. And then again, that changes a lot in the second one. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I have no idea why they
Yeah.
changed that. I heard that I was just reading in the trivia that there's a scene where Karloff is carrying um, Colin Clive up the hill, and
Yes.
apparently Whale made him do that over and over and over again, and because of that, he had arthritis for the rest of his life apparently.
Wow.
And I've got two different reasons for it. So the trivia I just read on IMDb says it was because Whale was jealous of sort of the attention Karloff was getting. The
Huh.
other thing I heard, and this makes actually more sense because that just sounds like some throwaway explanation,
Yeah.
was that there's the scene with the little girl. So
Mhm.
that scene, Karloff hated that scene. He didn't
Yeah.
want it included. So
Yeah.
they cut it out and test audiences were also just appalled by that scene.
Yes.
And then they cut it out. The problem was what was left was just the father carrying the little girl. So
Yeah.
test audiences thought the monster raped the little girl.
Oh,
So
boy.
then they had to put the scene back in
Yeah.
so that people knew, no, he just threw it in the water,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But apparently
Wow.
Karloff in public was speaking out against this scene, and that pissed off Whale enough to make him walk up and down. So, it's he definitely made him walk up and down, right?
Yeah.
And it seems to be to punish him, but we're just not sure exactly why. And that seemed to happen a lot, like directors just ruling the set with just like they do whatever the hell they wanted,
An
right?
iron grip. Yes. Well, Hitchcock
Yeah.
famously did things as well. And
Yes. Now this
yeah.
is a pre-code film. Did you? I was
Yes.
looking for things that might have been pre-code. I could. What do you think? Do you
Well,
think
I mean, I think certainly the murder of a little girl. I mean, they don't show it. They kind of cut, and it's a bit of a time jump, and then
Yes.
he's running away. But there's a
Oh
lot
wait,
of
sorry.
murders in
There
this.
is something I just remembered.
Yeah,
There's a scene where he says something about he creates the monster after it's alive. He feels like now I know what it feels like to be God, right?
yeah,
Apparently, after the Hays Code came in and they re-released it, they had to cut that scene out. And
really.
then later they wanted to put it back in, but they like the recording was already destroyed and they couldn't find it. And so because it was replaced by a thunderclap. And
Oh,
so
wow.
up until like the 1990s, it was just a garbled sort of thing
Yeah,
until they did the full-on restoration, the most recent one, where they found that recording on some thing that it was described. It was like a record but different. So they
yes,
found it and they were able to put it in. So the version I had, it had that in there, like you could hear it very clearly.
yeah, yeah,
So that was definitely one of the things that was removed
yes,
because it was considered blasphemous. It's like
yeah,
you friggin' idiots. That was the whole point. Like that's the whole point, right? He's
yeah,
punished for it. Like
yeah. Well, I
anyway,
mean,
it's just
yeah,
ridiculous.
you got a lot of iconic scenes like the It's Alive, It's Alive. You got the cast of the other Universal horror films like Dracula. So you've got Edward Van Sloan as the mentor, the teacher to Dracula.
Yes, yes. I was wondering who he was. Who is he? Is
He
he
was
his?
Van Helsing in Dracula.
Oh, okay. No, but who is the character? Like, is he?
So he was the
I always thought he
university.
was like some boyfriend of Elizabeth, but I'm like,
No,
what?
no, no,
What?
no.
What?
So
Doesn't make sense.
so You got to take notes on these movies as you go. So
Yeah,
when they were doing the dissection in the lab where Fritz took the abnormal brain, so Fritz is
right.
looking in the window. Edward
Oh,
Van
okay. Yeah,
Sloan
yeah,
is
yeah,
the
yeah.
teacher who also
Okay.
taught Frankenstein, and then they
But I
all
thought
file out.
so in Bride, is that Petraeus or whatever? Is that the different doctor
No, it's a
then?
completely different guy because Frankenstein's monster kills, like he's about to do a dissection of the monster.
Oh,
And then Frankenstein comes alive just in time and kills him. And Edward Van Sloan is he's one of my favorite old timey actors. Like just his delivery
oh,
is all that.
okay. You know
You
what?
know,
You're right. Sorry, I'm confusing the second
you're
movie.
confusing the
There's some
second movie.
guy who's like the friend of her, and I didn't know who the hell it was. He's an older guy you're talking about, right? Like
Yes,
he's an older
he's
man.
the older
Yes, yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah,
professor.
yeah. I love I love that scene where the hand comes up,
Yeah,
he's gonna dissect him,
yeah,
and then you get that slow rising
yeah.
hand. I love that.
And it also
Yeah, so they
featured
don't end
Dwight
up killing him.
Fry as well. So Dwight Fry was Fritz, who he was
Okay.
Renfield in Dracula, where he goes,
Okay.
rats, rats,
Oh, doesn't he have that
millions
great
of
laugh?
them.
That
Yeah, yeah, he's the one with yeah.
that's
So
right. He's got a
he
great
was
laugh.
Fritz in Frankenstein, and
Oh, okay.
oddly, they recast him in Bride of Frankenstein, where he's one of the gravedigger guys that come in and help
Okay.
Dr. Petraeus or whatever Patronus, whatever his name is,
Yeah.
um, with taking out the skeleton the bones out of the
Ah, okay.
19-year-old there to create the bride. So it's just funny because they're just reusing these actors all the time.
Oh, yeah.
But Edward
Yeah.
Van Sloan, I think every time I see him, I just love his delivery. He's got this wonderful theatrical way about him, and it's just he's wonderful as Van Helsing. Like he's probably I mean, as good as Bela Lugosi is, he's got a very good counterpart in Edward Van Sloan as well. So, but that yeah, so there's lots of great people, great actors as part of that Frankenstein, and as you noted. There are some weird things. Like obviously, this was what when was Al Jolson's, was it 1927 or 29? I think it was 27. So this was
Yeah, I don't
only
know.
4 years after the first sound uh,
Yeah.
movie had come out, like with any sound.
Yeah.
When the Jazz Singer, I'm pretty sure it was 1927. And so they didn't have music. There's no music in the first Frankenstein movie, and it's really jarring if you're a modern viewer watching it because
Yeah.
when the monster comes out and does his famous turn
Yes.
around,
Yep.
there's no. It's just they do a couple of camera cuts. There's no thematic kind of music to amp it up. It's just this,
Yeah.
and a lot of the scenes which you really see the value that great music brings to a film.
Yes.
In that,
Well, I really missed that. Like when the monster turned, I remember thinking, oh, I would have liked to, that would have been great with some music. But then in Bride of Frankenstein, Dr. Petraeus turns around
Mhm.
and there is a flourish, but it's really kind of stupid. And I
Yeah,
remember thinking, okay, actually, no, like the silent turn
yeah,
actually works better because the music they may have picked may not have worked, right?
yes,
So I thought that then I watched it again, and yeah, it really works. The silence and him because he backs into the room, right, and then he turns,
yes,
and so you get this really creepy reveal, actually. And
yes,
again, like you gotta, and you're never ever gonna experience it this way, which is too bad, right? I mean, maybe
yeah,
if you got hit in the head with amnesia or something, but you wouldn't be a person with the sensibilities of somebody from back then.
yeah,
This might have been the fourth movie you've ever seen in your life, right? Like
yeah, yeah. And it would
people
have been
weren't going to
absolutely
movies like today.
terrifying. It's Dr. Pretorius, by the way, just so we can.
Pretorius, okay, yeah, Petraeus
Pretorius,
is
yes.
that's some U.S. general.
Dr.
Pretorius.
Septimus Pretorius. How could we have
Oh, I
forgotten?
love that. Septimus,
Um,
that's awesome.
so
So
yeah,
yeah, then the monster, right, gets it commits quite a few murders, right?
yeah, it's
Most
a
of
pretty
them, it
violent film.
seems, he's just like his motivations don't, like he's just sort of rampaging around, right? I guess he's He's angry. He's sort of like a big toddler, right? It's kind of the
Yeah.
way he's played. And then you get the villagers chasing him around.
Yeah.
You get the hilarious scene where he throws Frankenstein off the windmill, that dummy
Oh,
that
yes. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he survives, right?
Yeah.
He hits
He
the
hits the
blades of the
windmill.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But that
And
whole
I thought, well,
build-up,
he's dead
though.
for sure. But
Yeah.
no, he's alive.
He survives. But that whole
Why
buildup,
not?
because you have the his creation, and then you have his kind of you have but yeah, there's this sense of like he's a toddler, but he's very misunderstood. And there's an interesting thematic kind of thing is like, yeah, he's a criminal brain, but he's pretty mistreated. Fritz tortures.
Yes. Fritz is the worst,
Yeah, I
right?
know.
Like
Yeah.
Fritz, you could almost say maybe is the catalyst for him turning nasty, right?
Yeah.
Like he's down
Yeah.
there whipping him,
And then
and
you've
then he
got,
like stops him from whipping him, but he
yeah.
just leaves, and Fritz picks up the torch and starts like torturing him, and then you hear this howl,
Yeah.
and you see Fritz kind of oddly hanging there. So it's like the monster went through an elaborate like hanging process for Fritz. And you think, well, yeah, he kind of had it coming, the jerk.
Yeah, I know. And then Waldman's like seems like a decent guy, but he's trying to dissect,
Yes,
the monster.
exactly.
Obviously, that's
Yeah.
a bit of a problem. And then he's everywhere he goes, he's, everyone's terrified of him. And then there's
Yes.
misunderstandings and so forth.
Well,
So
we find out in the second movie at some point we know he grabs a little boy by the arm, throws him around,
yeah,
because we know that. No, in the third movie,
in the third
right?
movie, yes.
Because he grows up to be a cop. It's
Yeah,
hilarious.
yeah, I know.
I love that character.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But I have to say though, the chase. So when they, when they are chasing Frankenstein through the woods and everything, there's some really wonderful cinematography there, where the again you through the use of shadows, running through the hills and
Yes.
there's a big one-on-one kind of battle between the monster and his creator. And then the
Yeah.
whole the whole mill, the windmill scene is actually, it's got this stark kind of
Oh yeah.
silhouette of a windmill against the sky, and the crowd, angry mob around with the torches and so forth. And there's just some great moments. Like you can see why it was so well respected at the time, and even
Well,
why it holds up to a large degree
and
today.
it's so concise. I mean, a lot happens, and the movie's what, an hour, 10 minutes, something
Yep,
like that,
70 minutes.
right?
Yep.
It's like, my goodness, this
Yep.
thing is like, and then the second one is the same, right? It's
Yep.
like you could watch three of these movies, or you could watch The Irishman.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
basically, at the same time frame.
Yeah.
And it really a lot happens. Like I remember when
Yeah.
I was finished, I thought, wow, that didn't feel like an hour and 10 minutes. Like I felt
Yeah.
like I watched a regular feature length
Yeah.
film.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of those,
Um,
Dracula is the same. It's around the same length. And that may have been because
yes,
the film canisters were 10 minutes each, right? So they may have been limited budget wise, to try and keep it to, a
yes,
certain number of
yeah,
film canisters that way.
yeah.
But
And then so then the monster dies, right?
yes.
And I'm assuming, yeah, I don't think they had any idea of a sequel, so I think he dies, right?
Yeah.
And then
Basically, yeah.
as many sequels, they have to figure out a way to bring
Yes.
that monster back.
Yeah.
It's like this. Actually, this is a good question. This could be the first series, like with
I was
a
wondering if it's the
sequel,
first trilogy because the first it made $2 million at the box office,
right?
budget of 357,000, so it was a big hit. Um,
Do you know
and
any movie with a sequel before that? Like
yeah, I
don't, my
can't think of
knowledge
it.
pre 1930 isn't great, but I don't know of anything that has a sequel.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, this has tons of sequels, but like, really it has one for sure
Yeah,
sequel made by the same company, right? By the same people.
it was certainly one of the first trilogies, if not the first.
Yeah, which is
Yeah,
pretty cool. So then we get
yeah,
into the next one, right?
yeah.
Bride of
So the Bride
Frankenstein,
of
I believe
Frankenstein.
35.
Yeah, Which, yeah,
last
as you
year.
said, they figure out a way to keep the monster alive by falling
Yep.
through the floor into water down below, which is actually a fairly reasonable explanation. I figured I knew what they were up to, but it still was a decent explanation of how to keep him going.
Yes.
And
But
then
I
there's
think,
more murder.
yeah, like yeah, he does. Yeah, he starts killing people, but again, they're all he's still very sympathetic in the second movie, maybe
Yeah,
even more so.
yeah,
He um yeah, like he none of those murders are uh like that he's just doing them to be vicious or whatever, right?
yeah,
But going to the beginning of that film, right? One of the first things that struck me was you go from 1931, right, halfway down the monster question mark
yeah,
to the first thing on your screen is Karloff.
yeah, yes,
And then you have like in smaller font, you have Bride of Frankenstein, right?
yes,
But I think like at a certain point, at that time, that confusion of the doctor with the monster, which we now have, like when you say Frankenstein to me, the first thing in my head
yes,
is the monster until my, you know, rational brain kicks in and goes, wait, no. But that's the
yep,
original, which is there for everybody. So
yep,
at what point, and I think the first um, culprit or the first, yeah, culprit in the chain has to be Bride of Frankenstein.
yeah,
Why the hell would it be called Bride of Frankenstein
yeah,
to
that's
begin
true.
with?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Like it should be called Frankenstein 2 or something. And then
yes,
after she's alive,
yeah.
Dr. Pretorius says, it's the Bride of Frankenstein. You'd think Frankenstein would be like, wait, what?
Well,
Like my bride's upstairs, right? Like
technically, he's
why?
kind of a son of Henry Frankenstein in a way.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So it could be like daughter of Frankenstein, but it's
Yeah,
it's certainly not thing. And then the other is you have in Frankenstein 1931, you don't even have based on the novel by Mary Shelley, you've got by Mrs. Percy Shelley, right? And
yes,
in the second one, not only does she have full billing with her maybe maiden name, I don't know what the Wolfsworth or whatever it is, right?
yeah,
And you have her name. You have a little vignette at the beginning with Lord Byron and her
yeah, and
discussing, the writing of it.
Percy Shelley as well, and Lord
Yes, that's
Byron.
right. Her husband there basically saying that he's useless. He basically kind of makes that point. It's almost like they're apologizing like over the top for
Yeah,
this little oversight in the
yeah,
first one, right? Because yeah, it's almost a full on mea culpa. Which
yeah.
I don't know. What do you think of that little vignette at the
I didn't
beginning?
like it at all. I thought it was really
It's very
silly and
strange.
unnecessary, to be honest. It's the only part of the movie I kind of dislike. Like the rest of it is great, but they should have just picked it up from that point. And then when
It's
they
a little
actually,
pointless.
yeah, it's just pointless and it adds nothing to it. And yeah, other than perhaps being a mea culpa, I don't know, but it doesn't add anything. And then they pick up the story literally right where it ends. Like
Yes,
the
yeah, I noticed that.
bill's
It's like
still on
right away,
fire,
right?
and they added in,
Immediately.
Connor, who is the
Oh my
screechiest
god.
woman of old film. And
Which honestly, I've seen her in lots of films,
yeah,
and she can be like this, she cannot be like this. So I think you got to blame the actress, sure, but I think you got to blame the direction as well,
yeah.
because obviously they told her to lean into that, and it's so
Oh,
annoying.
I know.
It's so annoying. Now I can handle it because I kind of like Widow Connor from other things,
Yes.
but man, like I've read a lot of stuff online where people are like, "Oh, but this screechy villager, and she's terrible," and I'm always like, "Yeah, I get it."
Yep.
It doesn't really bother me as much, but I can
Yep.
totally see how that would.
I understand. I
She's
understand.
yeah, wow, and she's
Yeah.
kind of used as the voice of the villagers, right? Which
Yeah.
is not a great choice either because she's just super
Well, I think
annoying,
it's
right?
comic relief, to be honest. I think the idea is that that's her role there, is to be the
Maybe yeah.
comic relief.
It was
And
so
even when the
terrifying that you
monster
had to
comes
have.
out of the hole there and stands right beside her, and then she runs away and does her
Yeah.
screechy yell and whatever. I mean, I know her most famously from the Alastair Sim version of Christmas Carol 1951, which I think is the definitive version. I think it's actually better than the original book. And I think it's because
Oh, I love that version.
yeah, I think for me, it's definitive. There's nothing better than that. And yeah. So,
Well,
so
there's
I know her as a
The
housekeeper from,
Muppets comes close for me, but
yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Um, but the second book is what I remember years ago because I watched these movies back in high school when I really first got into old movies. And what struck me the most about Bride of Frankenstein at first blush was the special effects.
yes,
Like that whole thing where Dr. Pretorius brings out the queen and the king and the
yeah.
ballerina and stuff. Like,
I got something to say about that when you're done.
yeah, because I was just even back then, we're talking in the 90s, whatever, I was blown away. I'm like, wow, they actually pulled that off where the king is actually climbing out of the jar
Yeah,
and
that's right.
falling,
And
you
he's
know, I'm
picking them
like,
up and stuff. Like that wouldn't be
yeah,
that
there
easy
was
to do.
and there was and they didn't you know when they had a long shot or something they would have the in the foreground they'd have all the king and queen doing their thing inside the little
Yeah.
jars and that was just at first I still remember seeing that for the first time thinking wow like they could do that in 1935 where it's convincing and it's
Yes.
really well done so that
What
was
was the Invisible Man that blew me away with that? Because there's a
yes
scene where he sort of is the bottom is not there and
yes
he's eating, and I thought, wow, I was really impressed by
yeah
that one
there's
as
some
well.
really
But what I
great
wanted to say
that's
about
John
that
P. Fulton right was the
is
special
that
effects guy.
okay,
Yeah, and he was
Pretorius.
famous. He's one of the first, probably the first famous special effects, uh, people that built a name for themselves. And so he did the Invisible Man as well, if I'm not
It's
mistaken.
really convincing, actually, those
Yeah,
little people, right? But yeah, Pretorius, like you'd want to pull him aside and say, like, why in the hell are you wanting anything from Dr. Frankenstein? You've grown these people. Like,
yeah,
what has Dr. Frankenstein done? He's used basically needle and thread and electricity. You're
yeah,
on to CRISPR. Like you are light years ahead of this guy. And he's like, well, I haven't achieved size. It's like, dude, like, like there's no comparison what he's achieved. And then the
yeah.
brain is different because he grew it. I'm like, what? This guy is
Yeah.
like next level genius. And Frankenstein is just some dude sewing body parts together.
Well, but yeah, but maybe he feels that there's some, well, he says there's something missing. I haven't solved the size issue.
Yes,
And
exactly. I was
so
wondering, well, after I
in a
saw that, I'm like,
way,
well, what exactly does he want from this guy? And
yeah.
then, and when you think about what brings the monster to life,
Hmm.
and I love the way they do this, and it's still a device used today. It's like it's the over sort of visuals that confuse you and lull you to believe that this could be possible. When you think about it, all of that stuff, it's just electricity. That's
Yeah.
all it is.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
chemicals that he's injecting or anything. There's no real science.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of elaborate electrical stuff going on, right? And I
Yeah.
noticed in the second one, it's kind of the same in Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
It's just more elaborate. So now instead of the thing just going up, right, in
Yes.
Frankenstein, and we don't see what's going on up there, right? We just see it from the point of view of the doctor and the people down there. This time we're also up on the roof with not Fritz this time. It's Carl and the other guy's name is Ludwig. We're up there with
Yes.
Carl and Ludwig, and we basically get the exact same thing. Only it's almost like a little bit bigger budget, and we're just
Yeah.
going to show it from different angles and yeah. Oh, the kites. They got kites this time that they got up there, right? That are attracting stuff.
Yes.
So it's sort of the same elaborate thing that is basically, I'm like, it's just electricity, really,
Yeah. I
right? That's
know.
all that.
But that set the stereotype for all of the movies to come. Yeah. Anytime you think of a mad scientist, you think
Yeah.
of this that set.
And it's also a great device for like you don't really need to go into all this elaborate crap and explain it, right? I'm thinking there of the Invisible Man where they're talking about the eating of the food, and it's like all that detail. It's just stupid because you're making me think. Well, wait, aren't we supposed to see his feces then? Like it's
Yeah.
like you're giving me too much information. You should have just left it, right?
Yeah.
Like no one's really asking about. Well, wait, he's eating, and so you
Yeah.
can start explaining things and dig a way deeper hole for yourself,
Yeah.
right?
True. True.
Whereas in this case, You don't need to explain it. It's
Yeah.
electrical. Who actually cares how it's happening? It's
Yeah.
really not the point. And I think modern movies get into trouble because it's almost like they need to explain stuff
Yes.
that they don't really need to explain. Like at the end of the
Yep.
day, the monster is the monster, right? Like how okay, Bride of Frankenstein, her hairdo
Yes.
suggests electricity was
Iconic.
definitely
Yeah.
right.
That was Elsa Lancaster, right? That was.
Well, yeah. Well, I thought as soon as you see her, I'm like, oh, it's Mary Shelley. She's transformed
Yeah.
into the into the thing because yeah, that's it's the same actress, and that's a bit strange. I
Yeah.
found right.
Yeah, that she's marrying her creation.
It
Uh,
was kind of neat,
I just want to
but
go
yeah,
back
it
and
like
quick correct. The original Frankenstein made 12 million on 262,000.
oh
Bride was the one that made 2 million on 367.
wow.
So,
So the original one made that much more, eh?
yeah, 12
12.
million,
Wow.
which back then
That
would have
yeah.
been
So no
massive.
wonder it spawned like this explosion of like you could make all
Hmm.
this money with them, and
Yeah.
I don't know how many Universal monsters. Like I watched a YouTube thing on Universal Monster, like it ranked them. I
Yep.
mean, they were including like the Mummy with Brendan Fraser, like
Yeah.
the Mummy with Tom Cruise. These are all still Universal, right? And I
Yeah.
didn't know like the Mummy is actually Universal idea. Like the other two, are source material, but the Mummy isn't. That's something
Yeah.
that they came up with themselves.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that all those there's still movies being made in this universe,
Yeah.
which is shocking to me. I had no
Yeah.
idea, right?
Yeah.
I guess the King Kong part of this? I don't know.
Um, I've always
I thought
viewed it
that
as
was Universal.
separate to,
Yeah.
but I don't know if it's because it's a different studio or whether it's because
I
they're
don't know what the studio is.
because when you think of the Universal horror, you think Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon,
I
you know,
like that one a lot.
but you don't hear about King Kong, in that sense. So
Yeah, you don't. It might be a different studio. I don't know.
yeah,
Um,
but it's not really considered to be part of the same thing for
no.
whatever reason. So
And I mean,
um,
I guess it is a bit, he is a bit of a different, but I mean, Creature of the Black Lagoon from the Black Lagoon or whatever, and King Kong, they're kind of similar.
yeah, oh yeah,
It's what I love I love the adventure aspect of those movies.
yes, yeah.
But yeah, so going back to Bride of Frankenstein, many, many, many people online are like, this, is one of the first times a sequel or is better than. I'm thinking, wait, it's like the first time there's a sequel, but many people think it's the much, much better film. I didn't
Yes,
get that. I didn't.
yeah,
I didn't watch it and think, wow, this is clearly way better,
huh,
right? I thought, I don't know. There's elements of both, right? That the cinematography of the first is great, but then the second one is incredible as well.
yes, yes,
Um, they're both 7.8 on IMDb, so like I
yeah.
think they're kind of neck and neck.
For me,
Um,
they're about the same. They both have a lot of iconic moments. They're both well acted. Again, Colin Clive is great. Um, and Ernest Thesiger is great as Pretorius. That
he's
he
great. He's
nailed his
really
part.
great. For me, he steals the show. Like
Yes, yes. And
he's
sorry, it's
in
Elsa
the crypt when he's like
Lanchester. Sorry, not
he,
Lancaster. I was
he
misremembering.
has a little picnic in the crypt at one
Yes,
scene,
yeah, yep.
and he first sees the monster. He's the only one who doesn't scream. Right? He's like,
No,
"Oh,
the
hello."
blind guy doesn't
Oh, the
either.
blind. Oh, that's such a sweet scene. I'm glad
It
you
is.
mentioned that. The scene with the blind man, like
Yeah.
it's so, like it really humanizes the monster,
Yes.
and yeah, the men who come in, you kind of get their point of view. He has killed a lot of people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's yeah, it's a very ambiguous scene. There's no real bad guys there. You want the men to be the bad guys, right? They come in just shooting away. But then when they say what they say, this guy's killed. You're like, yeah, that's a good point. Like you
Yeah.
don't just two dads walking around with shotguns. You do the same thing, right? Like, and the blind man, he's very, you think if the monster maybe had a year with this blind man,
Yeah.
he might actually have a good life, and he would have taught him well, right? But it's not that type of film.
Yeah.
it's a
No,
it's
it's
more of a tragedy
interesting.
than a horror.
Now, it is interesting that, and I did mention this earlier, but in the original ending of Frankenstein, Henry actually did die. but they changed the ending because they wanted the sequel.
Ah, okay, yeah,
And
because I
they
noticed
at
at the end
Universal,
he's lying in like the bed at the end of the first one.
yeah, but it's pretty ambiguous. It's just
It
it
is very
takes a
ambiguous, yeah.
very light tone because the Baron doesn't seem that concerned and he's drinking the wine and whatever.
Yeah,
But that's the only way you assume when he's taken away he's dead, but he's not. And even in the
yeah.
beginning of Bride, it seems like he's dead, but he's not. But they did that apparently because the preview screenings were so positive for Frankenstein, they were already thinking sequel, and so they actually had to put in the ending where Henry survives so they could actually have the sequel happen. And
Yeah. Something
yeah,
tells me they probably would have figured out a way to bring him back to life.
yeah, oh,
If
for
they
sure.
had
Well, especially if it made that much money,
Oh yeah, exactly.
right?
You know.
And so,
Um,
but it is funny because it's the Bride of Frankenstein, but the bride doesn't is not on screen for very long.
I was just gonna say that. It's
Yeah,
shocking how little bride there is in Bride of Frankenstein, right?
yeah,
You see more of Elizabeth as a bride than the other bride, right?
yeah. I know.
And I don't know, like it's I you know, it he has a son, right? No, he's they're trying to have a child or something, isn't it? Like there's something about creating life naturally versus he's dealing with this
Yeah,
monster thing, right?
yeah,
And you have him going more and more sort of mad.
yeah.
Um, and I think, yeah, it's really not a story about this bride of, and it's
No,
misnamed. Like the whole title, I think, has to
yeah.
go. Like it should have a
It's
completely different
memorable,
name.
but it doesn't. It's not particularly descriptive,
No, and
and it
it
is.
sets up.
Yeah,
It sets up the confusion of the name that persists to this
yeah,
day. I think it
yeah.
was the first sort of step towards that, which
Well,
is kind of funny because they mention it in the next movie. I thought it
yeah,
was
yeah,
really
they
fun
bring
when
it
they
up.
mentioned.
Yeah. A couple last things about Bride of Frankenstein. Did you find it disconcerting when Elizabeth was recast and they had Valerie Hobson instead of May Clark? Like to me, I'm like, whoa, that's a bit of jarring. Like her hair
No, not
was
really.
different.
I because
Like
it
they
takes
didn't even
off right
pretend
from
to.
there. It is a bit strange, right?
Yeah,
But yeah, it worked for me.
like she's
Yeah, I was
fine.
able
Valerie
to.
Hobson's fine, but they didn't even like dye her hair. So it's like one day she's a blonde, the next day she's a brunette,
Yes,
and they don't even
that was
address
at
it.
first I was wondering who the hell she was,
Yeah,
right? And then
yeah,
I was like,
exactly.
oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
There's like I was like, who's this woman who's constantly around?
Yes.
Um, and then yeah, so then going into the third Son of Frankenstein, I'm a bit confused about the timing of it, right? Like it must be long after. Like I thought it was just a few years, but it can't be. Like he's I mean, how old is Rathbone supposed to be? Like he's supposed to
I
be
would
gotta be in his
say I would probably in his
30s,
20s, maybe. 20, I mean, he's
late
married.
20s.
Probably, yeah, mid to late 20s, I
Yeah.
would say.
So we're talking like 20 to 30 years
Yeah.
after the events,
Yeah.
right, of that film. But strange the town. So we're talking about Son of Frankenstein was I think it's 1939, I
It
believe,
is.
right?
Now, interestingly, Colin Clive actually died in 37.
Ah, okay.
He was an alcoholic and
Hmm.
he just drank himself to death literally in 37. And so I wonder if that had something to do with the way that they set up the Son of Frankenstein to because they obviously couldn't bring Henry
Yeah.
back. So they're like, okay, let's move it a generation. And I don't know if that's the case, but I wonder if that's uh
I really, I really like that. I liked bringing us out of because if they did another one in that same sort of world, I mean, it could, get boring. This sort of shook it up.
yeah.
It took it. I like the juxtaposition of this middle class family, right? That's put into this environment.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know what the town did. The town have a name at all in the first two because it seems to be called Frankenstein
Yeah, yeah.
in
Well,
the
yeah,
third
it might
movie.
be. Yeah. If it's Baron von Frankenstein, then yeah, it
Yeah.
would be, right?
So but they clearly don't like him. They're
Yeah.
all very unhappy that he's back.
Yeah.
I think I started with this one, so I watched them in reverse order and then back again. And
Okay.
I started with this because I think I saw the like who was in it, and I thought, oh man, like here you've got Bela Lugosi, you've
Yes.
got Boris Karloff, and Basil Rathbone. I was like, oh my god, like I got to see this one first.
Yeah.
And I loved like seeing Bela Lugosi and Karloff together.
Yes.
And I thought, really, Lugosi kind of steals that movie. Like he's fantastic as Igor.
And Igor, right? Because everyone assumes that Frankenstein's assistant in the first movie is Igor, but it's Fritz.
No, exactly, yeah,
And I don't know how that I meant to look into like how that all evolved because Igor
yeah,
is the stereotypical name for the hunchback
yes, yes, that's
assistant,
right.
and
Well,
somehow Fritz just didn't stick. And yet I don't think Son of Frankenstein was uh, popular enough that it would have been something that would have carried, that it would have carried
yeah.
that name forward. So I don't know how that actually happened.
Well, that's an interesting, I think, film school thesis there, a paper you could write that, in fact, these three movies have nothing to do with the Doctor or the Monster. They are, in fact, the story of Fritz and how he becomes Igor and how we get the iconic
Yeah.
Igor. Because the third movie, he really becomes a super important character from
Yes.
being just sort of a henchman,
Yeah.
right? And it's really creepy the way when he's playing that flute, right? When he's
Yeah.
got the monster out committing the murders for him, basically.
Yeah.
And the reason for it, he can't be hung again because
Yes, because of his broken
he
neck.
wasn't killed, so they can't hang him again. I love that scene. It looks like he's on trial, but I don't think he's on trial. I think they're just questioning him
No,
when
they're
they're
just
talking about
questioning him because they want to know what Frankenstein's up to, and they say they can make him
yes.
talk.
That's right. And he's
Yeah.
basically like, what are you talking about? Like you already hung me once. I didn't
Yeah.
die.
Yeah.
And because this doctor, everyone he's ever pronounced dead was dead.
Yeah.
So I guess legally Igor's dead, even though he's alive.
Yeah.
And so the whole scheme is him using the monster to like kill the people who originally were on the jury and convicted him. Right. So the whole movie's a bit of a crime. Like they bring this sort of crime element, who done it,
Yeah.
into it, right? Which yeah, it's a very different. Like I found the tone quite different.
Yes.
Um, but I found it, and as far as iconic film, no.
No.
But
There's
I
some
had a
nice
lot of fun
visuals.
with it.
Yeah, there's some
I
nice
really had a lot of fun
visuals,
with it.
and there's some parts which
Oh
are,
yes,
you know,
the
uh,
fireplace, the way the where
yeah,
the table was, and that
yeah,
was incredible set.
yeah.
Like it was amazing, and it was a really weird stairway when they come in. This weird wooden stairway
Yeah, the way
along the
the
wall.
the way the light was shining, it made it look
Yes,
like the stairway was this weird like Escher
yeah,
type
that's right.
painting.
The light was coming through. It was really cool.
Yeah,
So I found that one to be, I don't know. I think I had the most fun with that one, to be honest,
yeah,
even though it's by far not the best one, right? I
yes,
think
yeah,
it takes a significant step down. It's still a great film.
yeah,
It's still above seven. I think it's 7.1 on IMDb. So it's
yes,
still considered a great film, but yeah, it's nothing like the other two.
yeah. And
So
it's interesting how it kind of plays on probably some of the criticism or some of the
yeah,
the phenomenon that became Frankenstein's
yes.
monster became. They kind of almost start the film with a little sort of meta commentary on
Yes, that's right.
like
Where
I
he's
can't
talking
believe
about
they're
9 out of 10
calling
people confuse the name
yeah
Frankenstein with the monster.
yeah
And I'm like, wow, this is 1939 and that's already happened, right?
yeah I
So
know.
yeah, that's
So it
so
must have
funny.
really um that must have taken right away where they misconstrued that
Yeah,
misunderstood
exactly. Well,
that.
I'm telling you that the second movie is the number one culprit
Yeah,
for that. Like,
yeah,
if you watch that film and you don't know any of the names, and then at the end you're like, okay, so who was Frankenstein? You're gonna go, well, the
yeah,
monster, obviously,
yeah,
right? Like that's
yeah,
the bride of the monster.
yeah,
So yeah, I think that sets that up. But I love the fact that he comments on it. I think it's funny.
yeah,
He doesn't say alive, but he does shriek the alive, right? When he notices the monster lying down there
yeah,
and the hand moves, he goes, it's alive.
yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah,
wish he did it a second one, but then yes, it would go into camp a little bit.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it's almost that acknowledgement of that because he does it. Clive does it in the second one, right?
Yes,
But yeah, you don't get the full "it's alive" and then the second "alive,"
yeah,
which you
yeah,
really want. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with that one.
yeah.
If
Now's a
if
Rathbone.
somebody was to say, "Well, I'm just going to watch the first two," I would say, "Yeah, you know what? That's probably That's
That's probably fine.
probably,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But this, if you love the first two and you want a movie that carries some of this on and is a lot of fun, yeah, I would definitely say
Yeah.
the third one is absolutely worth a watch.
Yes.
Um, I don't know if I'd put it in the 1,000 movies, right? I mean, at this
No,
point,
I
we're
don't
nowhere
think
near a
so.
thousand, but it might be one of the
Arguably
first ones I would.
the first two, certainly the first one. But yeah,
Yes,
the third one, yeah, it's fun, but yeah, and it's funny because it's actually quite well respected
yeah.
as a film. If you read any of the reviews, even at the time, the reviews were quite good.
Well,
And
and given all the other sequels, like when you compare it to the first two,
yeah,
okay, it doesn't hold up. But if you compare it to all the sequels,
yeah,
it's light years above all. Like if there's
yeah,
one, the Frankenstein meets the space monster or something,
yeah, yeah,
that looks just awful. So
yeah,
there's House of Frankenstein. There's so I watched Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. It's
yeah.
supposed to be the best
And
one, but
Lon Chaney Jr. did the sequel, the fourth movie in this
yes,
series, The Ghost of Frankenstein.
yeah, that's right. Which
Um,
doesn't look great either. So
yeah, yeah,
I think Son of Frankenstein is sort of the last
yeah. It's really the
one
last good
that
one.
is still a good film,
Yeah,
right? And sort of keeps the original storyline. Like there's
yeah,
no space monster, there's
yeah,
no mummy coming in, right? It's
yeah,
still those same characters. Okay, it's his son. It's We're still in the same village. We're still dealing with the exact same monster style, everything, right? You just
yes,
have a new monster in it, and that's this really creepy Igor guy
yes,
who is using revenge,
yes.
and he's also, I guess, kind of undead because he was hanged and he's still alive,
Yeah, and
right?
he
So
is actually in Ghost of Frankenstein as well. Bela
there you go.
Lugosi carries that character on to the next movie.
So it's that character that's in Ghost of
Yeah,
Frankenstein.
yeah,
Oh, that's awesome. Now I do have to watch it. I do like that character. I liked him a lot. Um,
yeah.
and he's obviously quite a bit older than he was in. Yeah, he would have been 8 years older now than he was in Dracula. But yeah,
Well,
he kind of
yeah.
looks it.
Well, yeah, because Ghost of Frankenstein came out in 42, so he would have been 10 years older than he was.
Yes.
Yeah. And famously he ended his career in his life doing Ed Wood Jr. films.
Oh,
Uh
that's right. Yeah.
Super low budget ones. And if you watch the Tim Burton movie, which I think is excellent, the one with Johnny Depp as Ed Wood, I
Yeah.
think it's
He's in there, I think.
yeah, they have is it Martin Landau? Is that right? Is
I don't know who plays him.
Bela Lugosi, and it's a very touching portrayal, and and it's yeah, because he was very much forgotten as a kind of quote unquote washed up at the end. He was typecast, he couldn't get roles anymore, and
Yeah, I
he
could
just
see
kind
that.
of sadly spiraled downwards with a heroin addiction, and
Well, I'm guessing Karloff would have been similar. Like, how many roles could he have really gotten with, he's very iconic. He was the mummy. He was sort of the,
yes, he was the mummy as well. Yeah. Yeah, I'd have to take a look here, but the other thing, so Dwight Fry, interestingly, died in 1944. He had a heart attack.
no.
Sorry, it was, I was sorry, I just have to check that, but when he actually died, but he was only, I think he's 44 years old.
These
And
people died, so many of them died young. And I think it's just the smoking and the drinking,
yeah, it
right?
could be.
Like,
Yeah.
smoking was such a prevalent
Yeah. I
thing.
mean, Karloff lived till 1969 at age 81.
Oh, okay.
So
I
yeah,
just
I
don't know
mean,
what his, I looked at his filmography and it didn't seem like he did that much afterwards.
no,
Probably TV, appearances and stuff.
yeah, and I think he did a lot of he became the horror movie guy,
Yeah, exactly. And
And
they were friends. Him and they were rivals, but friends. Him and Bela Lugosi.
yes,
And
yeah.
so yeah, they actually there's footage of Bela Lugosi being Frankenstein that was filmed on the Dracula set.
Oh wow.
And yeah, but apparently the footage hasn't survived, and yes, but then they ended up going with Karloff
Yeah.
as the
Karloff
monster.
also famously voiced How the Grinch Stole Christmas from
Oh, yeah,
66.
that's right.
So that
Oh,
was his other
wow.
big thing. So
Yes, that's
and
going to
he
be
and he
completely different
apparently had
now. I watched that.
174 film roles, so it's
Wow,
not a
that's
bad
great.
career.
That's great. And I think this one, like, he does give that monster the necessary like, and I think that's really what makes the film. It's got to be one of the top three most important things of the film series is the monster's heart, right? He's
Yes.
not a mindless killing machine. He's
Yes.
not he's not just a misunderstood friendly. No, he definitely has a nasty streak where he gets angry and smashes
Yeah.
things, destroys things.
But a lot of times you
But
can
to me,
understand why, it's not an unjustified
yes, yeah.
anger.
And most of the people, I mean, even with the little girl, like,
Yeah.
you see why, right? It is
Yeah.
a bit like she does sink like a stone, right? Literally a foot from shore. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, if you had that deep of a pond there, maybe you
Yeah.
should be more careful with your little girl. And the
Yeah.
dad is like, he's like, no, I can't play with you, honey. I'm busy. And he leaves.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, wow, he's going to be upset.
Yeah. But I mean,
Um,
Karloff does give that iconic performance three
yes,
movies in a
exactly.
row, and it does the monster justice. It's the
And the makeup is
definitive.
fantastic. It's so dated now, and it would, it's dated to the point of silly.
Yeah,
But you
like the
have to
sounds he
look at
makes,
it
like the row
from
row kind
back
of thing.
then. You have to,
Yeah.
and just the way he sort of vocalizes and stuff. Like, I think it's really, and I don't know how they did it, but I'm guessing it was done the way it's usually done, where the director and the actor sort of create the characterization together.
Yes.
And to whatever extent he was involved, he did a great job.
Yes. Yeah.
And
And
I think that
and just
that
to,
makes it.
kind of finish off on the Son of Frankenstein, the one thing is the acting is actually quite good throughout.
Yes, I agree.
And
And
there's
you're going to
no
get that with Basil Rathbone. I think his character is so funny in that he's just desperately wants to be this normal, liked middle class guy,
yeah.
right? Trailing this complete insanity in his past. Right? It's just like, I love it. And
Yeah.
and
I
then
mean, and
how,
Basil Rathbone obviously famously went on to do Sherlock Holmes
yes,
in 14 films, I guess. Even though for me, the just because of my age, the definitive Sherlock Holmes is Jeremy Brett, who did I think mostly BBC productions, I think, of Sherlock Holmes. But if you're of a certain vintage, then Basil Rathbone would have been your guy.
Rathbone, and I think Peter Cushing did some Sherlock Holmeses as
Yes.
well. So
Yeah.
there's another one of those too. That's going to be a thing in this channel, that actors that Toby screws up. Cushing and Rathbone, two I screw up all the time. Like, I thought for sure this was Peter Cushing, and I was like working under that. I was like, what the hell?
Well,
It's not Peter Cushing.
but you know why you might have that thing is Peter Cushing was famously part of the Hammer horror films of the 70s with Christopher Lee as Dracula.
It's that, and it's the Sherlock Holmes. I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
confusion that I have
There's
as
there
well.
is some
So
overlap there. So I'll let you off with a warning on
yeah,
that.
well, I'm going to start a list of all the people that I screw up, because it's a lot of actors that
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, that guy? Oh, wait, no, that's not that guy. And it's pretty common. I don't think it happens with women though. It's just male actors that yeah. And then it
Yeah.
goes like with Robert Ryan and Sterling Hayden. It's done now. I can tell them apart.
Okay,
But
good.
those two were constantly, yeah. And Gregory Peck and Robert Mitchum.
Yeah.
It's a constant one, right? And then you have Cape Fear. I'm trying to watch that. And I'm confused. Yeah, and they're not even similar. Like,
I
they're not really
know.
that similar at all, right? It's just something in my brain
Yeah.
just doesn't, yeah, doesn't click.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Anyway, like I
Yeah.
said, I think the first two, I would definitely put them in 1,000 movies. Okay, the first one for sure.
Yes.
You could even sort of pick and choose, because you're getting almost all of what you get in the first one in the second one.
Yes. Just an
If you
extension of the
want
theme.
music, watch the second one, right?
Yeah.
If you want a little bit more better production values, but then you got that fantastic cinematography in the
Yeah.
first one as well. Like that scene where she's walking with the dress, that alone is worth it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I really couldn't pick between the two. But the third one, if you love the first two and you want more,
The
and you
third
don't
one
have
is
to take a
not an
step down at all to get
yeah.
more, because that's
Yeah.
often the case. You got to take a real step down
Yeah.
to keep enjoying these.
Yeah.
You don't at all. It's
No,
a
no.
different film, more modern. Yeah, different sort of
But
sensibilities,
very
but
competently done.
yeah,
It's
really
not a
competent. Yeah.
throwaway.
And,
So
and, a, and a fun film. Yeah,
yeah.
I will definitely watch that one. You know what? I will watch that one before I watch the other ones, knowing myself.
Yes.
Like, it's like, yeah, I think I definitely will pull that one out more often.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us on 1000 Movies Before You Die. I'm Nate. This is Tobe, and we'll see you here next time.
See you next time. This was our Halloween special. Trick or treat.
All right.